Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to learn about Azure Active Directory for application security. Yes, within Azure Active Directory, you do have an option for registering your applications. When they register with Azure Active Directory, the application in the backend will create something called service principals. So these service principals are useful, or it's an identity which is created with your applications automatically. So what happens is the automated process would happen in the backend. This will grant the access for your Azure resources. So this access is restricted by a role-based assigned permissions can be given, so that you can actually control what Azure resources can have an access for these service principals. So we're going to do that in a minute or so. And also there's something called a secrets. When we talk about the secrets, the applications will have a secret user ID and password. Similar case where it's going to actually integrate these secrets with your applications, so that if anybody is accessing the applications, they can actually go and communicate with that secret. So now when we talk about the overall integration of these three different components with your Azure Active Directory, you will need to consider for the security. So coming back to the security side, since you have the service principals, you are actually no need to create your applications in a multi-tenant mode. When I say multi-tenant mode, let's say you have another tenant, not your on-premises or a single Azure Active Directory. Maybe you are supporting your client network. So if they have these applications, you no need to create your user account. Instead, you can actually access the application with the help of service principals and the secrets, so that it can be multi-tenant, also can be managed. So let's understand how this can be created from the Azure Portal, and we can grant access. So let's jump into the Azure Portal. I've just logged into my Azure Portal. I'm going back to my Azure Active Directory, and within this Active Directory you have enterprise applications, and also you have the app registration. As a first step, I can actually create an app registration. So it's nothing but you are actually registering an application, and when you create an application, it actually creates a application ID, and also in the backend a service principal. So let's try to create a new registration with an application. Let's say demo2 as the application. So you can give your application name. Let's say this could be your HRMS or some other application, so you can give. And when you create your applications, you can choose whether this application is open for only your tenant or multi-tenant, or you can open with multi-tenant as well as the personal Microsoft accounts also, or just for the personal Microsoft accounts only. So in our case, I'm actually opening this application for within the organization of my Azure Active Directory. And coming back to the URLs, you can ignore these. These are the this is for the authentication response for the URL. After successful authentication, the user would happen. So this knows to the developers, how they are actually going to use this application, whether they are going for web or native client mobile or desktop application. They will give this some kind of URL where it's gonna communicate for the authentication purpose. So in our case, we are gonna do a simple demo. This is not going to be a coding demo, but instead it's gonna actually give you an idea how you can actually create your applications, and you can understand the key components of the service work and the access part. So now the application has created, and this is the application. So as a next step, what I can do is I can actually create my secrets. If at all you're actually working with your certificates, you can actually upload your application respected certificates, so that the authentication would happen on a certificate based for your client. So in my case, I don't have a certificate, so I'm going to actually create here a secret. I'll just click on a client secret, and I can give here when it's going to actually expire. So in this case, I'm going to give here a demo secret, and I can give as demo secret, and it's gonna, I'm okay with the expiring in 1 year time. So this would actually generate this a key. So this is a key which is nothing but a password kind of thing. So what I'll do is I'll actually open a notepad and save it here for some time so that I can reuse this key. So this is a secret which will be useful in terms of identity when it is requesting a token. This would be used. It's like your application password. So now we have an application which was registered within Azure AD. So what I can do is I can go to enterprise applications. I should be able to see the applications that I have now. So I have here demo 2 as well as the demo app. So 2 of the applications are available. And also within my Azure portal, I have created already a storage account. A simple storage account has been created, and if I just go to the storage account, a simple storage account, and within this storage account I have a services called queues. So if you see here the queues, so within this queues I have created a queue with respect to the processing queue, and within this I did actually added some of the add messages from here. Let's see, demo 10 example. So I'll just add it, and I've removed this encoded message because it's going to be actually encrypted text message. So I just wanted to retrieve it as it is, so I don't want that to be happen in code. So I just gave, so there are a few of the queues are in the process, so it's not yet processed, and these information is stored within the storage account called here, and within the storage account under queues it is stored. So as a next step, what I'm going to do is I'm actually granting permissions. So if you remember, what we have done is we have created within our Azure Active Directory, we have created this application, and as part of the application it was actually created service principals in the backend, and we also created a secret. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to grant permissions for this application for another Azure resource. So in this case we are taking an example for storage account. So within the storage account we are going to grant permissions for this application. So this application will communicate with storage account to retrieve from queues all the queues which are in process. So as I said, this is not going to be coding lecture, but you'll get an idea and you'll get how the things are working in the back end, because it's not purely coding based what we are trying to do, but we are trying to retrieve the information from a client machine where we don't have any connectivity directly with Microsoft Azure. Instead we are going to use actually a secrets and the application ID, tenant ID, all that information to retrieve all these queues. So that's a demo. Now I'll point to the storage account, and within the storage account from the access management, that's RBAC, I'm going to actually add a role here called this. These are the default roles. If you have gone through the RBAC lecture, you might have know that these are the default roles. So I'm going to actually use for the storage queues data contributor role, which I wanted to take it because I'm going to actually work on only specific to the queues. So I have taken this, and if you see here, I can actually search for the user group or service principal. So in this case it's going to be service principal, and my application name I'm going to give here. If you see here, there are two things are coming up. So in this case I'm going to actually give here as a demo 2. That's my application 2 which we have created. So once you select it here, it will be listed, and click on save. So what happened is in the back end of when we created this application, it was created a service principal with the same name. So we granted permissions with the help of Azure Active Directory on a storage account for with respected to only queues. So this application query to your storage account and with respect to the only queues, and it should be able to pull the information. So how do we do that now? So as I said, we are not trying for a complete coding, but we are trying to pull out the required information. So for that there are few things to be customized. Let's say you need to actually to query these things. You can go through the Azure documentation which was provided if you just go through this simple post, it's a complex. In fact, if you haven't got any idea of Git or Python, it's going to be a little bit of complex, but just wanted to give you an overview. What you can do is you basically need to install the Python. Once you have installed the Python, you go ahead and install some of the modules which needs to be available within the Python. So in my case, I've already installed Git. So Git is, once it is installed, you have these options. So within the Git GUI, I did actually installed all the required modules. So if I just go to pip freeze, I should be able to see here my installed modules. In this case, the key is here as your storage account queue, which is available, also the identity specific. So these two modules got installed and readily available for me within my Python. And also I have already been using this Visual Studio Code. So I'll just open that. So this is my code, Visual Studio Code, and within this also I did actually install the Python specific extensions directly from here, so that all these Python extensions got installed. And now I have written a code, simple code that actually it's gonna connect to my queues. So to do that, I need to actually import the specific module. That's why in the first step I had actually imported all these queue specific things. So it's a simple command you can actually install like this. Queues, if it is available, it's gonna install, and you simply have to execute pip install Azure storage queue. In case if you don't have a Git, just search for the Git, and once you have the Git, you can simply install these commands. And also post to this, I did also installed Azure identity module also. And then if you see here, I'm importing these things, and then I'm gonna processing for processing queue. This is the name of my queue. So I'll just open up my Azure Portal and show you here within the storage account under queues, you have actually created here processing queue. So I'm actually giving the same name here. So processing queue name is this. So you can give here whatever the name you wanted, and I'm actually using the connection string as endpoint to connect over the HTTPS, and the account of my storage account is storage account 12 demo, or whatever the name is available here that has been copy pasted in the code. And for the endpoints, I'm actually using core.windows.net. as you know that queues.core.windows.net and the core.windows.net is the normal endpoints that you will anyway use it. And also I'm actually importing Azure.identity, and within this identity, client secrets credentials I'm actually importing. So this will have later point, I'm gonna actually recall my tenant ID, client ID, that's nothing but your application ID, and the application secrets. So here I need to fill here my tenant ID, client ID, and app secrets. So let's take the tenant ID information here, which you can get it directly from here. So this is your tenant. So in my case, this is my tenant, and I'm going to actually paste it this tenant information here. So in fact, I have already pasted, and the client ID is nothing but your application ID. So in your case, whatever the application you have created. So in my case, the application is demo2. So I'll just go here, and this demo2 application will have the application ID. So this is the application ID I'm going to actually replace with whatever the application ID you have. And later point, client secret. So this is the secret that we saved in a notepad, if you remember when we created. In case if you have not yet created or you lost it, you can actually go back to that specific application and go to secrets and try to recreate that specific application. So in my case, I need to go, if I want to recreate one more specific application, so I'll just go to registration of my application. So in this case, demo2, and under clients and secrets, I should be able to actually click on new and then create it. So this is why it is actually showing as a secret. That's why I did already copy this one. So I'll just use this demo2 a specific key. So I'll just enter this secret here, and later point. Now if you see here, I'm actually querying to the connection string to connect it, and for the processing name, queue name, and the app application credentials. So I have framed here to connect, and then it's gonna actually this is actually a queue called client. A peak message is a queue which is part of actually from your Azure storage queues. So from here I'm actually printing the required information. So I'll just run this from here, run current test file. So when I click on this, or I can straightforward run in a terminal, so this is going to connect to that specific tenant, and you see here all these information is coming up automatically. So we were able to retrieve at least the 5 of the information messages directly from our Azure storage account under queues. Whatever it was in processing queue, we were able to retrieve. But if you see here, there are close to 10, but we were only retrieved 5. That's because we did actually here, if you see here, I did actually give as the maximum as the 5 messages only to be pulled. So if I just go and set it here as the 15 example and click on save, that's going to actually pull up one more time. So I should be able to get it here, more information. You see here, I get the full information now. So I get all the messages that are in process or in the queue information. I was able to retrieve it. I will be sharing this script with you along with this lecture, but the summary of this lecture would be you can create your applications within Azure Active Directory, and you can secure them by granting permissions with the help of service principals, and their applications passwords can be stored with the help of secrets, nothing but either your passwords or your certificates. And you should be able to retrieve the application from the client side, the application, with the help of your secrets and tenant ID and other information if it is available. So I hope this lecture is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.